Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us. This will probably be, we might do one more next week, maybe not, just with the holidays. I know everyone is out and about with their families, and then we'll pick it back up in the new year. But this is a good one to end off the year. We are still waiting on our special guest. He said he was going to be just a few minutes late. And I thought in the meantime, Charlie and I were going back and forth on just like the mileage. He is running to compete at that level. A lot of people are still talking about like his 50-mile world record and what it takes to have done what he did. And I just thought it'd be interesting to hear the weekly mileage that he has been doing, but also when that started. Like, how long has he been running? And then everyone wants to know like the formula, right? Like, is he doing one hard workout a week? Is there hills involved? And so, Charlie, I'm going to kind of, I'll give you some direct questions. How about this? When did you start running? And then when did you start doing some decent mileage at what age? And what age are you now? Go ahead.
Yep. So currently, currently 28. I started really, I tell the story a lot to a lot of my clients and people that I coach where my parents got divorced when I was in first grade. And it was either that next fall was either go to cross country practice. Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Perfect. Just want to make sure. So in second grade, it was either go to cross country practice with my mom or go to daycare. So I'm like, I'm going to go to practice and try to beat the junior high kids. So that was only, a couple days a week, 2-3 miles here or there. But really started running pretty, like, I guess what I call decent mileage. Probably around like eighth, ninth grade. I mean, I was running maybe 30-40 miles a week throughout high school. I progressed roughly 10 miles a summer. So the summer before my senior, I was running about 65 miles or so. Then throughout college, really, it was kind of 10 miles after that. It was like 70 in the summer, after, like before my freshman year, then kind of 85, 90, 95 to 100. And then eventually 110, I guess, before my last year of college. So pretty gradual and roughly it's kind of what it worked out to be, almost 10 miles, of like summer mileage building up. And in the season, obviously varied with races and such, but it's kind of how I progressed and just responded really like pretty well to the aerobic work.
During that time, how frequent was like workout runs?
So in college, it was like all the summer, it was all based with strides. So like 2 or 3 times a week would be strides after a long run. Then once we got into the season, it'd be typically like 2 sessions a week with either a structured long run or a like medium long run, depending on the race. So like nothing too crazy. I start off with a lot of like long tempos, just your generic like long run, some fartleks. Then you get more specific as kind of the season progressed. Kind of same with track as well. It would be like a lot of 3-minute reps on the track or just, tempos out on, in Minneapolis, where I went to school and such. But then you progress into, rep specifics, 400s, 200s, some 300 specific sessions throughout it. But really broke down to roughly, probably 2 sessions a week in college. And with maybe a medium long or just long run. So.
And then as it pertains, oh, I see Jay's on here. We'll ask 2 more questions. Hey, Jay, if you can hear me. Glad you're on. We're just buying some time here, hearing about Charlie's training. In the preparation for the 50-mile world record, did you do a couple long runs where you were trying to hold the pace that you're trying to hit for the world record? And what was the longest distance of pace that you hit within your long run?
Yep. So my build was pretty unique. So because I still needed my Olympic trials qualifier as well. So I also I did like a marathon segment plus is what I did. So I still kept pretty aggressive marathon. Like everything was mostly at marathon pace, my sessions, with a couple like 24, 25 milers at like 5:30 to 5:40 pace. Otherwise, most of my sessions were going to be, and I'll kind of take a step back. So my weeks I divide them up into like kind of 2-week segments where I'll go like a Tuesday, Friday, Sunday long run, like what I just did today, where it's just like I leave and I don't come back for 25 miles. Then I'll go like a Wednesday session and then a Saturday. And next Saturday will be like a broken up, like marathon specific session. So like it'll be like a 3-4 mile warm up, drills, strides, change shoes, changing my flats, and then go do, I don't know what I'm planning yet, probably like 6 or 7 by 2-mile reps with 800-meter float in between. Is probably the plan. So with that being said, it's still not a ton at or around pace. It's everything trying to be honestly a lot quicker. And I'm doubling every day besides Monday. Monday is when I see my massage therapist. So I just take those afternoons off. But it's pretty high mileage. I mean, every morning's a minimum of 14 miles. So.
Yeah, wow. Okay. Thanks, Charlie. So since Jay's on the call, we're just going to pivot like straight to Jay. Jay, we really appreciate you taking the time to be here. I think we'll just really get started. No, we are recording this, Jay. We have a big team and only a couple people can get on every night, which we always appreciate seeing all the faces. So we send it out to the team and everyone watches it after the fact. But I think to just get started, I sent out your bio, but we would love to know just your background and just get to know kind of what has brought you to this place.
For sure. Yeah. First of all, thank you all for being here. I know everybody's life is busy, so thanks for taking time to and learn and improve yourself. So, yeah, I'm a PT. I've been practicing for a long time now, like 24 years. I started out in an outpatient sport and spine facility. Typical PT clinic, like most of you probably been to, I'm sure at some point in your professional careers or amateur careers. Yeah, I had kind of an interesting twist. In probably 2004 or 5, I ended up running the Gait and Biomechanics lab at University of Virginia. And one of the interesting things to me is that, people always looked at like, what do the research studies say? And that's important, and research should guide our thought process. But the problem is none of you on this call are an average participant in a research study, right? You're all different and you all bring different things to the table. And so I was very frustrated and talked to our department chair and I said, hey, would it be really cool if we could use all these toys we have? And we had a really amazing gait lab to actually look at N of 1. So it allowed us to look at what happens in each individual one of us, right? So instead of saying the average result of some intervention in a group of people like, college students, which is not you, right? Or the average results in a group of, elite milers, which is not you, right? So it's all these weird things that don't really make sense. So we're able to actually utilize individual data to help assess and get better information on what's going on and driving overload as far as injury, what's the limiting factor in terms of performance, and again, in each individual. So I've got over 7,000 individual gait analysis, which is not just my eyes, right? It's not just an iPad. It's using a bunch of really fancy tools and an infrared treadmill. I get force data. It's about $2.5 million worth of equipment. And one of the things interesting to me is patterns start emerging, right? And so one of the things I learned with all this data at my fingertips, and people always want to say, what's the best exercise for Achilles tendinopathy, or best exercise for shin splints, the best exercise for glute tendinopathy, or from patellofemoral pain. And that's not the right question to ask, right? And that's one of the things I've learned. That's the wrong path to go down, because you can have injuries for a multitude of reasons. And so what I try to do is look at what's the problem that's causing things to overload, right? I always laugh. The same things that cause, anterior knee pain can also cause 5 other injuries, right? And the same things that cause plantar fascia to become irritable also can cause 5 other lower limb injuries, right? So what I try and do is to solve the problems. And so it's led me to a bunch of things, right? I want to give back to my profession. I wrote several books and I publish all over the place for academic dorks like myself to try to help us better understand and deal with endurance athletes. But I wrote 2 books, Anatomy for Runners, which was targeted kind of at the, let's say, nerdy athlete to clinicians who don't really understand running, right? Because that's the thing. A lot of people say, I run and I'm a PT, or I run and I'm a doc, and that's great, but that doesn't mean you know how to really understand the problems that's facing your athletes, right? So I wrote that book at a very specific audience. Realizing that audience was a little bit up here. So I wrote Running Rewired, which is more of a distilled version that everybody can kind of almost hit the go button. We've got explanations and rationale in there, but then I want to give people plans they can implement right away. And then, one of the things is people need information, they need tools. And, those of you who ever had anything going on in terms of foot injuries or lower leg injuries, it drove me absolutely crazy that the current standard of care is to have people do alphabets, right, with their foot and ankle in the air, do some TheraBand sweeps, and do marble pickups and towel curls. And that's pathetic. That does not in any way replicate or prepare you for the demands of your sport at all. Like, it doesn't. If you've been in a boot for 6 weeks, it might be nice to do that for a week to mobilize your body, but that's not how you get better, right? Your foot doesn't work as an isolated thing off in space. It needs to work with your whole body. And I got sick and tired of seeing everything I've done is born out of frustration, by the way. I got sick and tired of seeing the same things come in, and people want the one exercise. There's not one exercise, folks. I'm sorry, it's not that simple, right? And so I wanted to help people do a better job to cue the muscles inside their foot, and more importantly, integrate those in the rest of the body. And I got tired of people, I'd show people things, they'd come back and they do it wrong. And I was like, look, wouldn't it be really cool if I could just make something that was sort of kind of cue/force you to figure out what you're supposed to do to work on dynamic foot control and health, and again, integrate it with your entire body. And so that's why I led down line developing this whole thing called the Mobo board. We can talk about this if you want. I would just say this. I always joke I'm the world's worst salesman. I don't care if you buy a Mobo or not, right? But here's the thing. I'm the one you call when you're like, oh, I've got this race coming up in 6 weeks and this thing just flared up. I'm like, this isn't the time to fix this, right? Like if I ask you, what are you doing for your core? All of you on this call could probably name 3, 4, 5, 10 things you're doing all the time, right? What are you doing for your hips? Like, oh, I got that covered. What are you doing for your knees? I got that covered. And I ask what people are doing for your foot and ankle health, and people kind of look at the sky and go, they do nothing, right? And that doesn't work, right? Like, you chose a sport and passion that you love, and it's your job to make sure you're preparing your body comprehensively. And I want to help provide the tools and knowledge to help you do that. So, again, if you take nothing away from this call, make sure you cover your bases. That's the biggest thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jay, for that introduction. And we are going to talk about the Mobo board, because the reason we actually are on this call is because one of our coaches and top athletes, Parker, recently got one, and he has had so much success with it. And so now I know a lot of his athletes have got one, and I'm about to get one as well, because I do believe in what it does by doing, just understanding the foot, the importance of the foot and the big toe and everything else. But can you please explain to our athletes why you created it? What does it do? And then we have some follow-up questions. And then, guys, if you guys have questions, if you can type it in the chat, and then we'll answer them as we go.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, again, I'm here for you, so please ask questions. I'm not gonna. I'll share a few things, right? So one, it's funny. This is just literally some bamboo that wobbles back and forth, but a lot of thought and energy went in to make sure this works right. I like probably most of you, I'm sick of widgets and just random crap out there. Sorry to be blunt, but I want to make something that was designed around your body, right? So let's talk about the body for a second. So while you run forward, your foot and ankle don't move forward. Yes, you can kind of step on the gas, but the axis in which your foot adapts to the ground, which is, I'm going to say words, and don't get confused and frustrated and panic. I'm going to say the words pronation and supination. Those are not diagnoses. Okay. If anyone's ever told you you're an overpronator, tell that person to go away. Okay. Everyone on this call and everyone outside this call in the whole world pronates. And pronation means you're just adapting your foot down to the ground. That's it. If I ask you, are you a knee flexor or extensor? You're like, well, I flex and extend my knee. I do both, right? That's just how your body moves. That's all pronation and supination are. There's nothing wrong with them. And there's not a single study out there to show the amount of pronation is correlated to injury. And I'll make that abundantly clear. There is research to show that people who fail to control the pronation and supination wind up with problems. If I asked you to run and jump and you couldn't control your knee, you collapsed down to the ground, that'd be a big problem. That would probably be a red flag. And you kind of witness realistically already, right? Oh, wow, I can't control my knee. That's what the problems are in foot and ankle. But people just basically put a sock on a shoe and they forget about it. So we want to train and teach you to control that diagonal axis. So the Mobo has these little fins, and these fins basically you take them out. You just basically do this. You pop them right out, and you can move them in different axes and different positions. But the most of the time you'll spend is with these in what we call the even slots, the 4 slot and the 2 slot over here. And what that does is that helps this board pivot around the axis of pronation, supination. So again, while you're running and walking forward, your foot and ankle have this diagonal. So I'm cueing your body to control that diagonal. That's key number 1. Number 2, if I ask you to use your foot and ankle, what a lot of people do, and all this balancing stuff, I watch you people, you stand on Bosu balls and foam rollers, different things, or maybe it's a flat ground. I say stay on one leg. And everybody does the same thing. They basically roll way to the outside of the foot, and they start to kind of lean to the side and shift. And the thing is, that's not helping, right? So what we want to do is we want to help discourage that tendency to lean outward and help you drive the big toe down. So what I figured out was, you have muscles in your, and again, I teach gross anatomy at Oregon State University. So this is what I tell my students, like, we just want to work with the body, right? When you look at how your foot and ankle are designed, you have muscles inside your foot that control your foot, and you have muscles outside your foot, which are in your shin. And most people are very dominant with what we call the long flexor muscles. And those muscles live up in the shin, not in your foot. Okay. And so when you do things to work on balance and control, what you wind up doing is you wind up curling and gripping, right? And you take your, if you imagine you just take your hands, you kind of make a fist like this, you can see everything comes up, right? And so the problem is when I ask you to try and balance and stabilize, most of you go to the outside, you use long flexor muscles and you kind of wobble around. And what I want to do is give you a situation or environment where that can't happen by basically putting this little hole in here. If you try and use your toes to curl, you can do that, but you can see there's nothing here, right? But I did give you contact for your big toe, right? And so by giving you contact for your big toe, what this does, it sort of cues you to be able to find a way to screw the midfoot and screw the big toe down to the ground, because this thing is going to what? It's going to wobble all around. Okay. And if it wobbles all around, you have no choice but to find out how to drive that big toe down and how to get stability and control for again, to cue the muscles inside your feet. When you push a big toe down, your body has to push the arch back up again. So I'm training you to use the right muscles to control the axis of pronation and supination. That's number two. Last thing, again, I teach classes on motor control. Motor control is not just how much can you bench press, right? It's how can I build better patterns as far as how I control my body. And so I want to help you, yes, develop foot coordination control, but I want to integrate with everything upstream. And here's a fun little secret I like to tell people. While we tell people, yeah, strengthen your foot, we want to strengthen your foot, but if I challenge a rotational control in your foot and ankle, you also challenge rotational control where? In your hip and your core upstream. You can't isolate a foot, right? We work with everything together. And so I want to help you do a good job at controlling the way your foot adapts to the ground and the way your hips rotate in and out and the way your core counter rotates, because that's exactly what happens in the sport that you all love to do, right? So I'm just trying to build an environment to help train and sync those patterns.
Very good. We do have some questions coming in.
Sure.
So I'm just going to read to them. So Alex wrote, I see a Mobo board in every PT office I ever been in. I have chronic ankle peroneal tendonitis in my left foot. Excited to test this out. What does the Mobo routine progression look like? And how long before you see improvements from it?
Okay, this is not a planted question, but great question.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go back to this for a second. So show of hands, who's done weight work in the past? Everybody, right? Okay. So when you do weight work, I'm getting into a question of how long did it take to see improvement. When you do weight work, let's say you've never touched a weight in your life and you go in and you start to see things, the needle moves up pretty quickly, right? Wow, I came in first day, I was doing 50 pounds. And in like 2 weeks, you're doing 80 pounds. And in 4 weeks, you're doing 100 pounds. And like, you didn't get strong that fast. Okay. That doesn't happen that way. What happens is to see changes in strength. Okay. So is actually looking at 6 to 8 weeks. We see people get better much faster than that. We see people get better in like the 2 to 4 to 6 week range. And what happens in that initial time when you start doing something new is not the fact you're getting, quote, stronger. I know we say that in lay terms, but reality, your brain is doing a better job to learn to control and coordinate whatever the problem is, right? So to answer your question, how long does it take to see improvement? It typically takes weeks, right? Now, in some cases, let's say you were in a stress fracture, you had a stress fracture and you were immobilized in a boot for 8 weeks, right? And you come out, I mean, when you mobilize your body, you know, weakens considerably, right? So you're starting way down here, right? But for the average person, they typically see improvements in weeks, not months. And I've even had people say they see improvement in days. And I'm not trying to spew marketing hype at you, but the idea is if you sort of, so most of you don't need to get stronger. You just need to figure out how to cue your body properly. And some people are like, wow, I've had this issue for a long time. I do stuff for a week. And I'm like, fine. I'm like, it's not magic. It's not voodoo. Your body just figured out how to control these things. It's got to put you in a situation where you had to figure out how to work your body properly. So that gets into how long before you see improvements. I'll say this. Typically, when we talk about, you know, what exercise to do and how often should you do them, forget foot specific stuff. Any type of balance or what we call proprioception type work is best done frequently in small doses, right? So don't say, oh, it's Tuesday, I'll get my Mobo out and work on it for an hour. Wrong. Okay, because your brain's gonna get exhausted and you're not going to pay attention and you're not getting quality bang for your buck. What I'd rather have people do is to say, hey, I'm going to put in like 8 to 15 minutes in 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week, whatever you can do. Okay. But the more frequently you challenge your balance and proprioception ability, the better you'll get things to improve as far as motor learning potential. And it's always best to do these before you go train. And I know people are like, wait a second, I love to run first and do my balance stuff. For strength work, that's fine. For balance and proprioception work, I want a fresh brain. Okay. I want your brain to go, okay, I'm ready. Right. And this is, again, I'm a motor controlled professor, so I'm a dork, but like when you look at how you retain things, the better environment your brain's in to learn, you get better bang for your buck. So pre is always better. So we talked about time to improvement. We talked about when you should do things. And as far as what to do, again, everyone starts somewhere. It's impossible for me to say, here's exactly what you need to do, right? But going back to my approach before, I try and fix problems. And the problem is most of you, again, not being picky, but most of you tend to wobble towards the outside of the foot and you don't know how to sync control through pronation and supination. So if ever you looked at our website, I have this thing called the foot 6-pack, right? And it's 6 different exercises. All you need for them is your board and a band. It comes with a resistance band, just a little typical resistance band like this, and it comes with it, and you can do all those exercises right there. Okay. And so the job of those first 6 exercises are just to help your brain go, oh, I feel the difference in my foot. I feel how I can control my foot and control, and build some awareness, right? Most people will spend, let's say, between 2 and 4 weeks kind of rotating through that series. And you don't have to do every 6 things every day, right? Again, like you're busy. I get it. I'm busy. Everybody's busy. So if you said, let's talk about having, let's say 3 days a week, I've got 10 minutes. Great. You're going to rotate through those 6 exercises and just rotate through them every few days. Maybe you do 3 a day, 4 a day, 2 a day, whatever you have time for, right? But get that in sequence. Once you built a foundation, right, you don't need to keep doing the fundamentals every single day, right? You eventually what? You start to build on each other. So what I started to do is I started to say, how can we integrate the foot with everything upstream? So if you go to our website, a few months ago, I added this thing called the little clickable body. So you can actually separate things out by core, hips, knees, and foot dominance, right? You can just click on it. It tells you exactly how to sort of kind of spot some things. So I want to integrate your foot with your squat patterns. I want to integrate your foot with your hinge patterns, which are kind of your deadlift exercises. I want to help you develop more rotational control because running is a huge rotational control sport. And most of you are not doing enough rotational control work. Again, as somebody who does this for a living for 20 something years can tell you, most of you can't control rotation of the foot and ankle. Most of you can't control rotation at the hips, and most of you can't control rotation at the core. And that's the problem I'm trying to help with. So I try to build those things to be incrementally cumulative and more importantly, additive. Because if I'm going to ask you to take time for your day, I get it. I want you to get as much bang for your buck as you can.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. So another question came in that I think is really great. Do you think various styles, support, cushion, stability, running shoes are important, or does it really not matter if you focus on strengthening your foot and ankles?
So the question is specifically how do different footwear types affect the footwear demand your feet?
I think the question might be here, and Todd can, if you want to ask it specifically, the way I read it is, you go to a running shoe store or someone said, hey, you should have this kind of shoe because of this, your high arches or what we're seeing. But then there's others that they're like, no, like you shouldn't create that support in the shoe. Does that make sense? Like, where do you stand on that?
Yeah. So I will say, as I tell people, I don't get paid to have opinions. I get paid to have answers for you. This is not bias. I just submitted a paper for the American College of Sports Medicine review book on the update of where we are in shoes, right? And what should we be doing? So this is not my opinion. I will tell you a few things. I'll try and summarize this really quickly. Number one, I don't care what type of foot you have. Okay. People come in and say, I have a high arch foot or a low arch foot or whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay. You're not going to change a foot type you have, period. You can change the control of the foot type you have. Okay. Nobody comes in and says, I have, bad wrists or bad, knees or bad shoulders. Like you have what you have, right? Build control around them. So the idea that, people with a flatter foot need a motion control shoe and a higher arch, cushion shoe, that stuff went out in the 80s and 90s. I personally have published scientific peer-reviewed papers on this myself. And I can tell you that when you look at this kind of old school methodology to sort of graph foot types and kind of assign people into groups, you can do that statistically. But when you actually actually measure the amount of motion that happens inside the foot when people walk and run, which is more important than just making artificial classifications. Everybody do me a favor, put your thumb and your index finger 1.2 millimeters apart. That's how much difference there is in different foot types in how much you pronate and supinate during various phases of gait. It's hardly anything at all. And it was only statistically significant when you look at the absolute floppy feet versus like the super high arch people. If you look at the average people, most of you in the bell curve, there is no reason to separate out foot type by stability, motion control, and cushion. That methodology is dead. Okay, I'm gonna put that out there point blank. So does footwear matter? Yes, it does. But to tell somebody that the shoe will take care of this problem for you, if you don't believe science, let's look at reality. The incidence of running injuries is not going down. Okay, you look at all the stuff out there, it's not going down. Why? Because most people don't do anything for their foot and ankle health, right? And so, we basically said, try different shoes and try this and try that. And I was at a presentation, there's this thing called the Running Event, which is the National Retailer Association show just 2 weeks ago in Austin. This woman's like, oh, I'm a master's runner, and should I just be trying more different shoes to build foot and ankle control and foot health? I'm like, what are you doing for your core? And she like rattled off 5 exercises. And I was like, what are you doing for your foot and ankle? She's like, nothing. I'm like, do you see a problem? Right? Like, you don't need different shoes. You need, shoes make a difference, right? Again, I do validation innovation work for 7 different brands. Okay. I'm the guy who calls the BS and waves the flag. And we see differences. We see differences from 1 to 3 to 4 to 5%. Okay. And that's huge. When I look at the body, again, I'm the guy who looks at the stuff in the lab. We can see changes of 30, 40, 50, 60% changes when you train the body, right? So investing time to build you will get way bigger, more bang for your buck than footwear ever will.
Awesome. Great answer. Thanks, Jace. So we maybe have 1 or 2 more questions just to be very mindful of your time. And we really appreciate it, by the way. Someone asked here, like, if you have one ankle that hurts more than the other, would you recommend using the MOBA board more on that foot because it obviously needs that extra help, or what would you suggest?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's funny to me, if you tear a ligament in your knee, what do? We like freak out. We go to DEFCON 5 mode, right? Like, oh my gosh, you're going to see a surgeon, going to do all these things. And people tear a ligament in their ankle, but a sprain, because a sprain's a tear, right? What do? Oh, wait 2 days and throw another 20-miler at it and see what happens. Like, we ignore these things, okay? I'm actually doing a study right now with my students at Oregon State University to look at chronic ankle instability, what type of patterns we look at, right? Because we know, I've published this as well in the past, that some people sprain once and they're lucky, right? They don't sprain again. That's great. And then I have the people who come to my office and say, I sprain often. I'm like, how often? And they say, well, I don't know, maybe once a month, twice a month, right? I roll my ankle every time I go down the stairs. That's not a strength problem. That's again, brain problem. So ligaments are kind of like walls in your room. All of you can walk around your house without leaning on your walls to check where you are, right? Because you have vision and you have proprioception, which is the ability to feel, and you have the vestibular system, which is your inner ear fluid, and that gives you information to regulate where you are in space and time to control your body position. And so when we sprain a ligament, what happens is you tear the connective tissue, right? And the connective tissue will heal really well. Ankle ligaments heal to 92 to 97% their original strength. They heal really strong. But when you tear those ligaments, you have nerve tissue in those ligaments. And when you tear that nerve tissue, it can't grow back. At 2023, where we are currently, we cannot regenerate nerves, okay? And so you lost that sensory input as far as where you are. So whoever asked that question, if you're the one who keeps spraining over and over again, it's slightly not just a strength issue, it's a lack of sensory input. Now, don't get depressed. You can totally rebuild and compensate for this because your body's amazing. We have this basically redundancy, right? We have multiple pathways to make up for problems if we can't control where we are in space. And so we can actually retrain, the technical term for these is you have these things called Golgi tendon organs and muscle spindle organs, and they regulate tension and tell your body, hey, there's too much tension or you didn't show up with enough tension. They balance things out for you. And by building control and coordination with your foot and ankle, you can actually upregulate those and entirely make up for those deficits in terms of your ankle sprain. So can you fix this? 100%. Okay. As far as you need to do more, I mean, initially, yes. Typically, what I tell people is if you'll do, like, say, 3 sets of an exercise for your problematic side, at least do 1 set for your opposite side, right? To kind of make up a little bit of counterbalance. But don't just train your injured side and say that's it, because the research also shows that if you've tended to have an injury on one side, we said, hey, you know what? You were so bad at controlling your body that you got hurt. And the tendency for you to probably get hurt again is higher than the average person, right? So again, I want to make sure that you're not become a statistic, right? I want to help you stay healthy. So definitely put some time into both sides per week. Doesn't need to be a lot, right? It might be, again, 3, 4, 5 minutes, 2 to 3 days a week, but a little bit goes a long way.
Awesome. I have 2 more quick questions, Jay. Does this help for biking as well? Do you see a direct translation?
Yes, I do. And so, so I'm going to say something which I'm not being mean, but just going to be honest. Cyclists are the worst athletes on the planet. Okay. And here's why I'm saying that. Don't get mad at me. It's so repetitive and so constrained compared to other things, right? Like running is way more dynamic, right? Swimming is way more dynamic. Running, I mean, cycling doesn't put that much rotational lateral control in your body. It just doesn't, right? That's why typically we get hurt. You can bike, right? And a lot of mileage and not get, not have those things flare up because it's not as much demand those tissues. The flip side of that is this thing called Wolff's Law. The body adapts based upon the stress it's given. And if you don't do anything, right, to work on rotational control and frontal plane control, we can kind of get away for a long time until we can't, right? The body breaks down. So when you talk about bike fit, I do a bunch of work on bike fit. I've done bike fit programs for multiple brands across the world. And we look at, can we fit a rider to a bike? Yes, we can do that. But what's more important is the body that you put into cycling, right? And so a lot of people do a lousy job, again, controlling foot and ankle control and controlling hip position. And they wind up with knee pain and low back pain, everything else. And if I can help you steer your foot and ankle straight, we build a better foundation. Like, again, everything, look at your body, everything above your body, it's dependent on what? Your landing gear. Your landing gear is your foot and ankle, right? That foot and ankle needs to be able to control and adapt down to the ground. So is it as critical as more load-bearing sports like running, cutting, jumping, etc.? Not as much, but yes, I've had hundreds of cycling patients who need to work on foot and ankle stability. So yes.
Awesome. And then the last thing, it's and you mentioned this before, but someone said we're going to purchase the board. Does it have a Mobo for Dummies starter kit? Do you just jump on and go? Or you said the exercises, are there clear YouTube videos so people can see what to do?
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, it's pretty simple. Again, like I've done multiple things, multiple, partners over the years. And one of the things I realize is people don't want too much information. It's when it's simple, right? So if you just go to if you open up the inside of the box, we have a little QR code right in there. It's the pictures of one exercise, get started, called the foot band twist exercise. Super simple, but it's teaching you again to screw the big toe down and control counter rotation above, because that's what your sport demands, right? So it's super simple. But then yes, if you go to the Mobo website, click on the exercises tab, we have it broken down in terms of foot six pack. I have some notes on there, and it's some more people who want more information can dig down. There's more, info in there on how to motor control integrates with strength and stability and mobility and all these things. But I try and keep it simple. Work on those. Again, tell yourself, I'm going to find 8 to 15 minutes, 2 to 4 days a week, right? If you you'll be shocked at the difference. Honestly, I'm not just saying this in terms of how connected and how stable you feel. For those of you who are doing any type of single leg stuff, and the second you stay on one leg, you kind of shift over, wobble to the side. That's not okay. That's not because you're weak. It's because you don't know how to control the right things, right? So like Bosu balls and stuff like that, and like they have a place, but what I find is they're too unstable and people shift their trunk over and everything else. So the purpose of foot six pack exercises is just to teach you how to get things very simple. If you're somebody who actually has been immobilized in a boot, let's say you've got a history of falls or like significant sprains, and you're really unstable, go click on little foot on the interactive body thing. And I've got some kind of regressions, right? So simple things. If I say stay on one leg and some of you are like, that's too hard right now. I get it. Everybody starts somewhere. So what can we do? Put one finger on a wall or a chair to give you, be amazed. Just that one little sensory connection, how much it helps you control things so you can work specifically on your foot and ankle and stop cheating and shifting at your core and your hips, right? Because I want to make sure it's specific. So I have regressions built in if you need them. And again, after that first 2 to 6 weeks or so, when you're like, I got it, this makes sense, I'm feeling much better, I get this, right? I want to progress with you, right? So let's say you're doing some work on your knee health and hip health and core health, which I'm sure all of you are, right? Let's just integrate your foot with it. So guess what? If you're already doing split squats, do them with your Mobo. If you're already doing landmine deadlifts, do them on your Mobo, right? If you're already doing, some different types of hip rotation exercises, do them on your Mobo. So guess what? You're getting double bang for your buck. You're being challenged to work on your foot and ankle control while you're also working on your hip control. So I try to make it, again, I want to get you as much benefit as you can for the time you're going to put in.
Awesome. Thank you, Jay. Guys, we do have a code. It's NVDM10 to get 10% off if you wanted to go to the website to purchase it. Jay, is there something we did not ask you that we should have asked you that you would like to tell us for the last thing before we head out here for tonight?
For sure. I would just say this, it's an interesting time of year, right? It's December, and hopefully some of you are getting in some off-season time. I'm gonna have two big asks. One, give yourself some time to rest, okay? And I just want to be clear about this because some of you are looking at what's the secret advantage. Most of the elites that you're looking at these days are kind of chilling out this time of year, right? Both physically and mentally. So let yourself have a little bit of a rest, okay? And eat some cookies and drink some eggnog and have some fun, right? It's like you deserve a break, number one. And number two, when you look at, okay, after that kind of rest time, I want to have a plan to kind of look at my season going forward next year, right? Like when you look at not just swim, bike, and run, I want you to look at what type of balance work you're doing, what type of stability work you're doing, and that needs to be consistent. These are not off-season things. I've been lucky in my career. I've worked with over 50 different Olympians. I can tell you, we do this stuff all season, period. Right. So this is not just something you'll do for January and March and be done. Right. Like we're going to basically make sure that we find a way to integrate things with your life. That being said, this needs to integrate with your life. You don't have to do 50 exercises a day. You don't need to do that. Like no one does. Right. But just be considerate and saying, hey, if I'm going to do X amount of volume in terms of training my engine, I also have to do some type of volume to train my chassis. And the reason the vast majority of you are getting hurt is because you're always revving your engine a red line every single time and slam on the gas. And I want to help you develop better stability and control so that you can keep that steering wheel nice and stable and not keep wrecking your car, because that's what winds up happening, right? So I'm going to beg you, like I beg everybody, I don't care what you do, just be consistent and have a plan and stick with it. And you'll find yourself being stable. You'll find yourself being controlled, and your body can tolerate higher amounts of volume. That's a really important concept.
Awesome. Great way to end this call. Jay, we really appreciate your time. We got so much from that. And guys, thank you so much for joining us on this call. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions, let us know. But yeah, we all think, no doubt, this was really helpful and informative. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks so much. Happy to help anytime I can. Y'all have a great day. Best luck to you all in the holidays.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jay. You guys take care. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Jay.